mountain, go down, buddy. Oh, mountain, go down.
What a first beautiful mule buck.
Yes.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Pursue the Hunt's very first videocast. My name is Mike Friesen, and I'm here with Pursue the Hunt's co-founder, Travis Johannesson, who is joining us from his home in Kamloops, BC, and also with our pro staff hunter and cameraman, Ryan Penoyer. In today's show, we want you to get to know us a little bit better, so we will be answering questions about us, our hunting experience, and a couple of unique personal preferences, along with a few stories. Pursue the Hunt is on YouTube in our first season, and we will be showcasing hunting all over BC and giving you plenty of hunting and education strategies to make you more successful. With that, let's get into the first section of today's show. Welcome and thanks for joining in, Travis.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Awesome. So we're just going to get into a bit of an interview style to start off the show here. We're going to just talk about a few questions here. So we'll start with this first question here, Travis. What sparked your interest in hunting, and what's your experience level? Like, where do you feel you're at?
I think I've always had a strong connection with the outdoors. I grew up hunting, or not hunting. I grew up hiking, camping, fishing with the family. But yeah, I just never had any exposure to hunting at all. I think the first real time I got introduced to anything hunting related was in high school. I go over to one of my buddy's place and we'd watch Jim Shockey videos just all night. And he grew up in a hunting family, so it worked. So I got my core when I was 17 and my firearms license when I was 19 in anticipation of really getting into hunting right away. But the busyness of life and just circumstances, I wasn't able to really get into hunting. I didn't have anybody to kind of show me the ropes, as they say. So I didn't really start hunting till I was about 23 years old, and I'm 30 now, so 7 years ago. But I was always just really drawn in by the immersion into the outdoors and into the wild, and the connection you have with nature while hunting, and that in combination just with the primal aspect of studying, stalking, and killing your prey. That's what really got me into it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Travis. And what about you, Ryan? What would you say you kind of piqued your interest or sparked your interest in hunting?
Well, it started off at an early age. What really kind of peaked it off was with my dad. He taught me to shoot with a 22 410 over and under, going after gophers. Just a little problem on the farm. But that's kind of the initial start to my hunting career, and that was at an early age. Now, once that took a foothold, it didn't take long, and spent a lot of time hunting different game. But so it's an enjoyable thing. Nice,
yeah. And for myself, I took my hunter's education course when I was in grade 8. Actually, we took it in school at Upper Pine there, and our teacher, took us through the course, and he actually in November shot a deer and actually brought it into class and taught us how to field dress and everything. And it was a bit of a new world, but I've always loved the outdoors and things like that. And then I had the opportunity to take my first deer with my dad when I was 18. And then there was a bit of a hiatus there when I went off to university, and I just couldn't wait to get back and get right back into it. And yeah, I'm just excited to share my experiences and knowledge along the way. And so I would say I've been hunting fairly steadily since I was 24. I'm 34 now, but also a little bit before I went off to university there. So yeah, awesome. Okay, well, we'll just dive right into our second question here, which is, Travis, what's your favorite aspect? Like, what's your favorite part of the hunt when you're out there?
That's kind of a twofold thing for me. Number one is the challenge. You have to be on your game at all times, always alert, always thinking of so many different things that work together that can really make or break a hunt. I mean, it can be mentally, emotionally, and physically draining, right? You go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows at a given second, and you got to remember that you're in their backyard, you're a visitor in their home, and the odds are just never in your favor. And I guess the second part is the adventure. Right? Adventure is it's so exciting, and everything that works into that. I happen to be a chronic wanderer, as as you'd say, which sometimes I don't think works in my favor, because patience is it's a key element to have while hunting, to be successful at times. But I just get drawn in by always wondering what's over the next ridge. What kind of things am I going to discover? Am I going to miss out if I just stay here and
Right.
sit? So I think that's why spot and stalk hunting is my favorite method of hunting. It gets me on the move. It allows me to do looking and also moving, right? I have a hard time sitting in a tree stand for any extended period of time. I think just the wilder the place to hunt, and the harder I need to push myself in all those manners, physically, mentally, to be successful, is just what I love and what keeps me coming back.
That's awesome. And what about you, Ryan? Like, what kind of part of the hunt do you really enjoy the most?
A little bit of what Travis had to say. Like for me, that challenge of the hunt, and that challenge is in so many different aspects. But one of them is outwitting your prey. You're going into their backyard. They know the routes in and out of that place, hands down.
Right.
And you're a guest. So if you can outwit game, especially a wily, older,
More mature
species,
Yeah.
then in their own territory, that's something to be proud of.
For sure. And I think for me, it's kind of a little bit like Travis, where it's a bit of a twofold thing. Where, for me, it's the ability to unplug and focus on one thing, where I'm not worried about work or anything else, where I can just, like you say, focus on that game, get into their environment, use the shadows, use the wind, and use all these different aspects of the environment to stalk in. I definitely enjoy that challenge. And I think the second step for me is to, just kind of outsmart it, I think, and the learning experience I get from that, because every time I go out, like, you're never guaranteed to get anything, right? And so when you go out and you stalk up on a deer and it catches your wind and it's gone, right? And you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or I always like to give myself a bit of a performance review and go back after I get back home and say, okay, what could I have done better? Why wasn't it successful? So that the next time I go out, I can be more successful that way. And a better hunter, right? And that's part of the ethical side of the hunting as well, is learning more and making those better decisions. So awesome. Okay, we'll move on to our third question here. Travis, what are kind of 1 to 3 things that you always keep in your pack? Like, what's always in there?
I came up with 2 that were kind of, I came up with 2. The first one is it's a bit of a luxury, I think, but it's a Garmin InReach GPS. I just got it last year. It's got the SOS beacon. It's got 2-way communication abilities. So I think, like, before I see myself as a hunter, I'm a father to 2 boys and a husband to my awesome wife. And my ability to return home safely to my family is my number one priority. So the ability to check in with my wife every single night that I'm out, on a long, multiple day hunt trip, right? Like, if I can check in every night, that just brings her so much comfort, and also me. And with that, I'm also able to push myself a little bit further than I would without it, right? It's a bit of a safety net, and knowing that I can get myself out of a jam and not, be worried. It allows me to go a little bit further. Second one is a compact tripod with a bino adapter. I think as soon as I discovered that, it changed the way that I hunt. To be able to just to get your binos rock solid, right, and steady, it really allows you to see so much more than you would without it, right? Like, if all you're looking for is the flicker of a tail or an ear, right, just being able to have that steady, then it opens up a whole new world for you, really. I've spotted so much more game that I think I would have definitely missed if I didn't have that. And there's a lot of good systems out there that can be super quick, so it doesn't take a lot of time.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks, Travis. What about you, Ryan? Like, what kind of are your non-negotiables in your pack that you always have on you?
I've got 3 non-negotiables.
Okay. Okay.
One being a fire starter. I probably have more than one in every pack that I carry. Had those situations where I didn't have a fire starter. Don't want to go through that again. Now, the other one is a knife. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Doesn't have to be anything big. It just has to be sharp.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I usually carry a 10 mil bag in there. That 10 mil bag, it's fairly large, almost as tall as I am. And the nice thing about it is I can cut a hole in the top and 2 on either side, and I can have an instant tent. So
Right.
weather goes bad, I get stuck in an area where I'm not going to make it back to camp, I'm at least having a warm night.
Like a bivvy sack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, and for me, I think weapon and optics are a bit of a given, and I think like I have some unique items. I have this inflatable scouting seat that I really like to bring along because I hate a wet butt, and so often there's like dew on the grass or stuff like that, and I mean it really goes down into like smaller than the size of a cell phone, and you just inflate that up. I can sit on any kind of surface, and it keeps me dry that way. So that's one of them. The second one is actually extra headlamp batteries. I've had an occasion where my headlamp accidentally turns on in my pack, walking around or setting it down or whatever, and then when I need it, it's dead. And I vowed to myself that I would never do that again. So I keep a set of AAA batteries in my pack all the time, and even an extra battery for my rangefinder too. So that's useful. And the third thing I always have is 1 to 2 person kind of first aid kits. Got gauze, gloves, stitching kit, things like that, because you're a long way from help, when you're definitely out in the bush, out in the mountains. So you want to make sure that you're not bringing a hospital with you, but you're bringing enough that you can, tourniquet a wound or close up a cut or something like that. So I think that's kind of 3 that I always have in my pack, whether I'm going out for the day or whether I'm going out for a week. So awesome. Okay, well, that kind of brings us to the next part of our show, where we're going to be just talking about Pursue the Hunt. What is Pursue the Hunt? Why are we doing this? What do we feel we can all contribute to the show? Travis, I'll start with you. What do you feel the different aspects of what you're going to bring to the show are going to make it successful?
Well, I think the big thing that I really want to do is try and bridge that gap between those who don't have a lot of experience in hunting or have no experience at all, but really desire to get into the sport. Kind of bridging the gap between that and actually doing it and getting into it. I know it can be super intimidating a thing to do, right? Like there's so much information that you need to know. There's legal stuff as far as firearms and how to store and transport and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the actual hunt. It's getting to the places you need to go, shooting the animal, and then everything that comes after that, and making sure that you can don't waste any of that meat. So there's so much information out there, or that you need to know. And I just, speaking from my own experience, this is a bit of kind of what I went through. Like I said, I didn't have anybody to take me through that. So I had to do a lot of that learning on my own, watch a lot of YouTube videos and figure a lot of this stuff out. So I think I really I'm speaking to kind of the more novice hunter, which I am in this group with the 3 of us, right? Like I have, the least amount of experience. But I really want to show the realities of gaining, that new knowledge and the whole process of making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And just with this Pursue the Hunt, right? Like I want to take everybody on our adventures and show us the hunt, show them the hunt, what we do, why we do it, and hopefully it can just give somebody out there who's watching some confidence to know that not everybody with a show has tons of experience, and
There's
that
nothing wrong with making a mistake.
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Like that there's going to be mistakes on this show, and I hope that we can use those opportunities just to showcase that and help people out.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, that's awesome. And what about you, Ryan? Like, what do you feel some of your strengths that you're able to bring to the show and help the audience out with, maybe learning some things and things like that?
Well, sometimes with getting to know new hunters, even some older hunters that have had licenses for years, seeing mistakes that they make that I made at one time too, and seeing the lack of knowledge out there regarding simple things like after the shot and you got an animal down on the ground,
Right.
what do you do?
Right.
There's not a lot of classes out there to show somebody how to start processing an animal. And I'm hoping that we can get that out there in different terrain. Say we're in a field, on the tailgate of a truck, or if we're in a mountain somewhere on a slope,
Yeah.
dealing with an animal or a species after we harvest it, how we process it.
Yeah.
And I think if I can give a little bit of knowledge and get people past the mistakes that I made, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point when you watch other hunting episodes and things like that. I've noticed myself is often there's a gap, right, where they've downed the animal, they're talking about their experience of how they got to that point and things, which is all great, but then they cut to the next clip and they've got that animal in their pack and they're heading back to base camp.
All the glory.
And you're like, okay, well, but what happened in between, right? Like, you were on the side of a shale slope mountain. How did you quarter it? How did you keep the cape? Did you salt it? Did you not salt it? Things like that. How did you cape it so that the taxidermist can do a good job stitching it back up when they mount it for you or whatever, right? Go ahead.
Time frame that people are gonna maybe not know about.
Right.
In different terrain, you sometimes don't get that animal out the exact same day.
Yes, that's a very good point too. Like or even just how long processing an animal takes. Like, depending on the size or the terrain or the environment will extend that time frame. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, it's dark. We need to get back to camp. So awesome. And I think for me, I really love the landscape. I personally think that BC has one of the most diverse hunting environments where you can go alpine hunting for goat and sheep, or you can go through the thickest bush after a moose. We've also got turkeys in the southern interior and in deserts, right? And the terrain is so vast. I'm looking forward to hitting up all these terrains and showcasing what BC has to offer. I'm really excited about that. So awesome. Okay, well, we're getting near the end of our show, but before we, actually, you know what? I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna do this after. We're gonna share stories first. I think it would be really cool for the audience to get to know us a little bit about our own memorable hunting experiences. So we're going to share in each one. Travis, let's start with you. What's your more memorable hunt or experience that you've had?
I think the most memorable hunt that I've been on was just this past year that Mike and I went up northern BC for a stone sheep mountain goat hunt. It's DIY. There's many hours that went into scouting, e-scouting and planning and how we were going to put our packs together, what we were going to take, right?
Yeah.
There's so much preparation, a lot of physical preparation and, mental preparation, just gearing up to do that. We packed in 7 days, I think. So we had everything on our packs and set out, and it was just the biggest adventure that I've been on. Like everything like I said before, the challenge and the adventure, what I love about hunting, this was it. And all wrapped up into one big thing. So it was like Christmas morning, getting up that day that we started our ascent. But yeah, so it was day one.
Sorry, Travis. I think we have a picture of it as well. We we can throw on screen there.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
The goat.
Well, the goats. This is the goat right here.
There it is.
Spoiler,
Yeah.
shot a goat, but
Yeah.
yeah, just a bit of how it went down. I guess day one we got up there and spotted some stone sheep right away. Just using lambs, no rams, but right, like that was one of the species we're after. So we were super pumped to actually see something. At day two, near the end, we just went out for a bit of an evening glass, and as soon as I got out there, the second I threw my binos up, I spotted this little white speck across the bowl, and right away, right, like there's a mountain goat. It's all alone.
Well, and I mean, I think we had. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think we had just finished dinner, and we were like, let's go out for a little spot. And I don't think we had our spotting scope set up for 5 minutes before all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a mountain goat across the bowl. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And sure enough.
Yeah. So we knew that like time was not in our favor, right? It was only an evening kind of session, so we booked her down this bowl. We seen it was moving across the shale, so we tried to kind of cut it off, and so as we were running down these shale slides, making probably way too much noise, we made her to the bottom and just kind of snugged up on a little knoll and was just looking around to see if we could spot it. And then there, Mike, he spotted it on a cliff right in the middle of the bowl. It had kind of turned and went the other way, but just was right at the top. And so we're about 300 yards away, and I hunkered down and got ready to make a shot, and it was facing us, bedded down. So the shot opportunity, it was such a small little window, and I just didn't feel comfortable taking that kind of shot. We had a pretty good crosswind too, so we just waited 45 minutes. Eventually, after a bunch of praying and waiting, it stood up, and I got a shot off. I connected good, but it was still moving, so I knew I needed to try and get another shot. Second one, I rushed, put her in the dirt. Third one, connected good, and just tumbled down the little cliff to the bottom of the hill, and it was the most exciting, exhilarating animal I've ever taken. Just walking up and seeing a mountain goat that I had shot, and it was, words can't describe. It was awesome.
Nice.
So we got back to the camp by the time it was dark, and stowed her away, and spent the next day and a half trying to get Mike a stone sheep, but knew that we needed to get out there for the meat spoiled.
Well, and I mean, as you can see in the picture there too, we're on the side of a mountain, like what we were just talking about, and it was definitely more difficult than I've experienced to cape it out so that we could keep the cape and get everything there. So that's just a prime example of what you were talking about, is educating people on that type of stuff. So I think that's great. And yeah, I think for me, my more memorable story came only a couple of years ago. Actually, I just got into bow hunting, and it was the beginning of September, bow season, and I had this deer on the camera, on my trail cam, and he was 5 on one side, 3 on the other, and I called him the king. Like he was probably a good 180 class mule deer, and I kind of started patterning them, and I got out there the first day. I stalked into the group within 30 yards. There were 6 of them on the edge of the field. I was like, man, there's way too many eyeballs out here. But the wind was good, and I just waited it out, and I knew eventually they had to stand up. And sure enough, they stood up, and the king moved into one of my shot windows, and I missed low. And oh my gosh, like, it was just a sinking feeling, right? And luckily it was a clean miss. I looked all over, didn't find any evidence that I had nicked him or made a bad shot or anything, which I was thankful for. And even that evening, I went back out just to see, and he was out there feeding with the group. And I was like, okay, well, another day. So I go back out the next day, find the herd in a really bad stalkable spot. I pulled out, went back in the afternoon, because they were right in the middle of this low, swampy spot in the field. And it was a dried out spot, but they were just all kind of in there, and there was no real good angle. So I went back in there. I thought, man, I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to sit in those cattail, and they're going to come back in. And so when I got out there, there was only one of the group that was actually bedded in the peas just off of the swamp. So I took a risk, and I think we have a picture of it here. I took a risk, and I moved into the swamp, and I sat there for 2 hours, and sure enough, this thing slowly meandered in right within about 25 yards, and gave me a perfect broadside shot, dropped them, went only 5 yards, and had my wife actually bring out the side-by-side so we could pack them out. But the coolest part is I didn't know at the time, once I had him measured and everything, is he made the Pope and Young book. And that was just kind of the cherry on top for me. And the taxidermist did a great job. He kept the original velvet for me, and I got it shoulder mounted in my house now. So whenever I look at that on the wall, it's like, man, that story just comes right back in, and it's pretty cool. So, and what about you, Ryan? What's your
stories stick with you, whether you get an animal and you're able to see it every day up on the wall,
right?
Or some of those stories where animals get away from you. And for me, this one happens to be one where it got away.
Right.
So I had an LEH draw back when we were allowed to harvest grizzlies in the province.
Okay.
So we're up on this hillside and we see this grizzly. So we start working down through the willows. 2 partners that were with me, they stayed up on the hillside, and I decided to work myself a little closer. These willows are about head height, 6-7 feet tall. And as I'm getting closer, this grizzly, I realize, is bedded down, laying upside down on a kill.
Oh.
So it must have been buried an animal of some sort, but he's on this mound of dirt, and he's laying there, and this magpie's hopping around on him. And he's not moving, not flinching. So this is odd, because all I can see is basically a window to his body and one paw. I can't see the rest of him because of the willows. And so I get a little closer and I cow chirp at him. Doesn't even flinch. This bird takes off. And then after that, I'm like, So I pull out a elk bugle, because we were elk hunting at the same time. And I give this elk bugle a call. He doesn't even flinch. And we're talking 30 yards tops away from this bear. And it's just odd that he's not moving. So finally I just yell with my voice, "Hey!" And it jumps up, spins around, and looks right at me, and he's got this head that fills up that whole window, and I can barely see his legs, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So I line up on the animal, and of course I don't have a shot to take except for on the head, and I don't want to take that shot. He decides he doesn't want to be there either, and I don't want to take the shot at that distance face on. So he bolts off to the side and takes off through the brush. Hear him crackle for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then it goes silent. And we're still standing in 7-foot brush.
Did the hair start to stand up?
Yeah, that's when I'm like, okay, he knows we're here. He knows where he is.
Yeah.
Let's work our way out of here. So as we're walking out, I'm heading out and I'm passing one of my friends, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I says, "I don't want to be the last one in the lineup."
All I have to do is outrun you. That's right.
So we get back to camp, and that was a good, memorable moment. Didn't harvest a grizzly that year, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just an encounter that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to either, right? So that's a pretty neat story. So awesome. Okay, so before we end off our episode, we're gonna get you guys involved, and I've got some things here. So we've got a set of 6 Killing Sticks hunting arrows and a hat right here that we want to give away to one of you guys who are looking for more hunting arrows. And who isn't looking for more hunting arrows? So here's the deal. We're going to put up our social media tags. It's at Pursue the Hunt. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow our Instagram and our Facebook page. Tag a couple buddies, friends, whatever. That will enter you into the draw. We will do the draw April 15th, and the winner will get a set of Killing Sticks, hunting arrows, and a hat. We'll ship it to you.
Yeah,
Cool.
We'll ship it free of charge.
That's right.
To see how far away we get viewers from.
Yeah, that's right. That's right,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Pursue the Hunt Live. We're certainly enjoyed that you decided to join us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us in our next segments coming up as Ryan and I will be diving into our packs to show you what we bring along for a spring bear hunt. And we'll be discussing on our next video cast spring bear hunting in full. We'll talk about getting your tags, scouting preferences, weapon of choice, and more. And as always, thanks for watching this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.